What kind of role do you think storytellers have in trying to either make society a little bit better or inspire people to make changes in their own lives to make things better for everyone?
I guess for me, stories are really important because you're passing information along. So there's a few cultures and a few tribes and even dynasties, I think, where they didn't have written record, but they did pass on stories, which I've always found fascinating, especially because with every story, I'm sure something has changed, so it might be different from what it began, but that's story, like over generations. And I guess I feel that quite keenly because, so my dad's from Pakistan, but his family were born in India, and then there was a partition. And I'm really, really interested in genealogy, but there's no records really for me to find because during colonialism and the partition, a lot of things were destroyed as my ancestors fled persecution over to Pakistan. And that makes me really sad because all I have now are some stories, but not all the stories. So I'm constantly bugging my parents and my relatives to tell me stories because I want to, maybe I can use them in my work, but if I have kids, I want to be able to pass those stories on to them. And it's not about necessarily like, oh, I'm losing my culture or anything like that. It's just, it informs who I am. It's interesting. It's so curious. And there's places like, I think it's Iceland, for instance, who most of their citizens can trace their lineage back a ridiculous amount because the records are so pristine. And I don't have that. And like a lot of white British people, for instance, can also do that. And I'm just constantly envious because I would just love to be able to go back. I've done like those DNA tests, and it's like you are actually like you're Scottish, your nationality Scottish, but you are actually also Scottish. And I'm like, but where? How did that happen? And then it's like you're also Afghan. I'm like, cool, but where and when and why? And then there's just like all these kind of other things, and I don't know where they come from. And I know it's probably common for a lot of people, but when you only have stories, they become even more not personal, even more important and special because that really is all you have. I wrote a short story for a book called Who's Loving You, and that I wrote it by accident. Like my gran had passed away and I missed her funeral because I was in the US and I felt really guilty. But the story was basically the gran and the granddaughter sharing stories, and the gran just basically sharing stories of her youth. And it was just because I didn't get to ask my gran all the questions I wish I had because she was a fountain of knowledge, but I was always too busy. I was always traveling, I was working, and I was always like, I'll ask her, and I just never got to, and it kind of haunts me, and it just informed that story. It was like a kind of rom-com, family kind of rom-com, and I didn't know I was holding all that inside because I hadn't planned to write that. It just happened. So stories again are cathartic because I realised that I had been holding that inside, and this is a way to express it. And also I guess it was a way for me to honour my nanny, my gran, but also like add a story out of it of like what could have happened or what could be, and what I wish had happened. And I feel like a lot of people could maybe relate to that as well. Like you always think there's going to be a next time, but that's just not true.
In what ways do you think Scotland has the potential to be more utopian?
More utopian?
I suppose that's a bit of a loaded question, but I suppose in comparison to a lot of places, Scotland is fairly utopian, I guess. So
I moved back for a reason. So it's just funny because the national animal is a unicorn, right? And what can be more utopian than a unicorn? So we really set the standard for ourselves quite high. I don't know, I just feel really lucky to be from here, it wasn't always easy growing up, but like everyone has, teenage years are never easy really for anyone, and I've and I remember when I was younger, the music scene was amazing. Constantly Scottish artists just really being seen and heard and being in the mainstream. And I went to the school I went to, BMX Bandits, and oh, this is terrible, and I forgot, and I really love them. Anyway, some other people, including Sheena Easton, who I still really don't know who she is, but apparently she's like really popular. Anyway, sorry, Sheena. Oh, it's going to really bug me, the band. His name's Norman.
Teenage, yeah, damn, well done. You got there just before. Very nice.
Yes, like they are great and they were great, and I remember being fascinated because they had a connection with Kurt Cobain and Nirvana, and that was so strange to me because I was like, Scott, we're tiny, and then like they're infiltrating like this huge, massive cultural touchstone, and that happened like in this. It grew from the small town I'm from, so I just was really inspired that so much creativity came out of Scotland and Glasgow in particular. I guess what really hurt was that there was no room for me because no one at that point knew what to do with like a funny Scottish Asian woman. And I say women because I don't think they knew what to do with women in general in kind of the art scene. It was very much a boys' club. So I had to leave just because there was not really any opportunities. So I ended up going to Paris and then London, and London's where I built my career. And then I went to the US, and as nice as it is, it's not a place that I ever want to live. It's very shiny on the outside, very broken on the inside, and I don't get it. But very fun. And then I came back to Scotland, and I was like, just going to be here for 3 months, maybe 6 months. And it's been like maybe a year and a half later, and I'd have no intention of moving out again. It's home, it's base, and it's so nice to be with my family again. So for me, that's utopian, is that in the time that I was away, Scotland somehow caught up massively. There's room for me now. There's room for more women in general. There are more opportunities. Commissioners are being a bit more open-minded. Not always, but being a bit more open-minded. People are willing to take more risks and gamble a little bit more. The generation I grew up with just seem to really they push things forward. They seem to be having their voice heard a bit more as well. So I'm just so glad to be back, because when I think about it, I didn't really want to leave. Like, for me, it's a great country, and like, again, had its issues, but like, especially having been in the US, like, it puts you into perspective, like our healthcare and our roads, and like Glasgow's a grid system, and I mean, I know the US is as well, but Glasgow is special in that way. It's a grid system, and I took that for granted. And then you go to London, and it's like, well, you take this alleyway to this alleyway, and you're like, whoa. And I think that it's just more progressive than it was. And I know everyone's like talking about independence and not independence, but it's so complicated because what Scotland means to people will always differ. So as much as I am pro-independence, it's really, I don't have anything against people who aren't, just because it's like, this is your home, and you want to protect it. And I understand people who are cautious towards it, and hell, I'm cautious about it because, like, after Brexit and freaking the Trump guy in the office, which is our fault, by the way, because his mum was Scottish, so we gave that to the world, which is like bad on us. But it's this thing where we've been burnt so many times that you can't get your hopes up too high, but you also want to be cautious because we're in a pandemic. Who knew that was going to happen? Well, apparently scientists, but we don't listen to scientists anymore, so who knows? Yeah, and I don't know. I think, so basically, I grew my formative years where I always like section my life before 9/11 and after 9/11, because before 9/11 I was like a kid playing like with dolls or Spice Girls or anything, and after 9/11 I was like enemy number one, and it just went from me having friends to eating lunch by myself in the bathroom, because people don't quite understand how different your life comes. People wouldn't touch me because they didn't want the brown to rub off. So when people talk, because a lot of people do have this thing, we're like, Scotland's perfect, it's utopian, and we're like so nice to everyone. And it's like, do you know what? Yes, but really cruel at the same time. And we've come far from that, but we still have ways to go. But then, like, I almost feel treated as saying that because I do love where I'm from, but it doesn't mean that it didn't cause me pain as well. I mean, social media it's been really great for my career just because it helped me get through doors that were locked. But I absolutely hate it now. Other than like Instagram, which I'm just kind of perusing on, everything else feels like it's just gone from interesting to almost evil. And I don't know if it's the pandemic and people have idle hands and everyone's just so angry, and I just had to stop using Twitter basically because I don't know how people don't absorb and internalize all that negativity, because I certainly was. And I just came to a point where I was like, what am I doing? Like, why does this matter? And just my life's been better off without it. You can check in. Whereas people say Instagram's quite toxic, but I think maybe the way you use it can differ, because I love watching like Hidden Door, for instance, catching up on that, and like some beauty things and some fitness things and food things and my friends, and it's easier to curate, I think. Not that I'm like trying to be an Instagram sponsor, but it's for me right now the easiest one to kind of mental health wise get on with, because I'm too old to fall for that thing where I know everyone's face tuned, I know everyone's photoshopped it into their life, like all those people, influencers and stuff like that, who don't even look like themselves, but on Instagram they have that thing. And luckily I'm secure enough to know that. The younger me didn't know, but now that I know that, it's so easy to just be like, meh, and then just right onto the next thing. And because I have ADHD as well, I love Instagram for it because the community is great. And there's a lot of people like Danny Donovan, for instance, does these comics. And sometimes it's like, how is this woman inside my brain? What is happening? And it's such a nice moment just to be like, oh, okay, there's billions of people in the world. You're not the only person to ever have felt this way. This is nice. It's kind of, it's like that thing where they say about heartbreak, right? You think you're the first to experience it, then you read a book and you realise that you're not. Maybe Instagram is the new book. No, that's sacrilege. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have said that.
Well, there's a quote. Yeah. You know, that's how we're going to promote this interview. Instagram is the new book. You can curate it really, really carefully to just see what you want, and that's a great thing for mental health. It's maybe in some ways a bad thing because it can create a much more of an echo chamber. You know, if you're, say, a right-wing, person and you only follow right-wing things, you're only ever going to see that news. But I think
if you use it more as a lifestyle, kind of the way that you read a magazine, that is kind of how I enjoy it. Like, you read your horoscope. I don't personally take my horoscope seriously, even though sometimes it's way too accurate. You enjoy it, right? But it's just a way to pass time. And I wish that we could have an approach to social media that is as casual as that, but it is, from experience, far too easy to get sucked into. And especially, like, I remember when I was at the peak of the kind of social media. Why is it you sound 100 when you say social media instead of just saying the actual platform? So, like, with Twitter, I remember like Tommy Robinson attacking me, and then like just random people who see that you've maybe gained some interest from the media or something, and suddenly they want to put you in your place, and then you're being attacked, and then all their racist followers come and stuff, and you're just like, I just want to write, but I know I need to have some sort of mark, because everyone has to hustle now. You can't be a person if you don't have a side hustle and another side hustle. So it was just got to that point where it was like, why is the price I'm paying misogyny and racism, which is I get enough of, but why am I actively inviting it into my life now? But I genuinely do think that people believe that that's how we live now, but we don't have to, or maybe we do and I'm just being naive.
That would be my next question then, to put this into context, is how could social media change or be used to be more fitting for a utopia?
First of all, we need to get out of the pandemic. People need to get their lives back, don't have such itchy fingers, and put their phone down. Because if we are cooped up all the time, it's so easy just to rely on technology, right? Like we're so removed from everyone we love that of course you're maybe going to Skype or Zoom and stuff, but you're also going to Instagram, tweet and Facebook and all those things. And as we know, those contain the best of life, but also the worst of life, and bad things always go way more viral than good things tend to. So once we're out of the pandemic, I'm hoping people get their lives back and remember like how good flirting is, dating, sex, food, restaurants, walking, like all these things that we've not, I mean, I know we've got to walk, but all these things that we've kind of been denied, I'm hoping they remember, including myself, just how like good life is without being attached to that little rectangle, like semi-attached. I don't think we're going to ever not detox from it. But once we're out of that, I think too much, like I'm not even a pessimist, and maybe it's just realistically, utopia-wise, social media just gives too many people a voice. That sounds like people shouldn't have a voice. It gives too many ill-informed people a louder voice to spread their misinformation. And all the precautions that people can take, Twitter and such, is just never, ever going to be enough, because human nature is to push the boundaries, and there's only so much safeguarding that you can do. And also, we should be accountable for our own actions, and it's actually embarrassing that we have to have our hands held on social media. But at the end of the day, like, no one should be getting that much abuse either. So we just don't deserve it. That's it. It should just be like on a timeout. The Wi-Fi is disconnected from the whole world until we learn our lesson. And that's like a dystopia, but maybe it turns into a utopia. So yeah, it's a hard one to answer, but I love, like, if we could use it more for creativity and like, I hate the whole positivity movement, because it's not exactly as what's the word? There's not often substance to it. It really is just like, hey, look at my abs and this is positivity, and it's just like, okay, cool. But like toxic positivity is now a thing. Anyway, just buzzwords.
You've recently written a sitcom for radio.
Yes.
Radio has persisted in many depictions of the future. It's just a kind of broadcast method that we've had for so long in the past, and people always see it persisting into the future. What do you think its role will be in a utopia?
Wow. I don't, so this is probably not going to answer the question, but I just remember, I don't know when it was, but maybe a few decades ago, the radio did this trick. A channel did this trick where they were saying, I think, that aliens had landed, and people believed it because they had no reason kind of not to, and it sounded very serious because it was like a news bulletin. It's one of my favourite things ever. And I kind of like, I know that's not utopian, but I hope in the future we're able to trick humanity again about something like incredible that is just so unbelievable, because it was just so convincing. But we can't do that now because we have the internet and we have Google. But I always wonder how those people felt listening to it, being like, oh no, this isn't real. And then it just ramps up. And then it's like the best practical joke ever, except people genuinely were terrified. Radio in the future, I guess because podcasts are huge now. And podcasts is like, no offense, but they're basically radio. Like, it is radio, but fancier. And it doesn't seem to be going away anytime soon, which is great, because I love to just be constant listening to something. So I hope that we kind of keep that, because it gives your eyes a break, which is nice, because I am always on something. But I don't actually know how it would inform the future, mostly because my brain goes straight to holograms and things like that, opposed to radio, which I'm so used to and familiar with, and can't really imagine an alternative thing unless we find out a way for myself in the future to communicate with myself now via radio, that would be cool.
Time travel radio.
Yeah, if I had a radio right now, we should stop for 5 seconds and then just be like, me in the future, if this is real, contact me now. And then like nothing's happening. But
Let's pause.
Run.
And that's where we're editing some like
Yeah.
creepy sounds of your like echoing voice.
Yeah. Run. That would be really cool. Now that might be a TV thing I should do. Okay, I'll think of that pitch for later.
Yeah.
So last one is just have any depictions of the future inspired your work? You know, whether those are positive visions of the future or negative, you know, has any of that sort of seeped into what you do?
I'm going to say something that's potentially controversial, but I do not understand anyone who watches The Handmaid's Tale for entertainment. So I would say that I'm influenced by making the opposite of that, because that feels too much like it could be real life. And again, why would you watch, like as a woman especially, I'm just like, why would you watch this? This is like too close to home. And when we had like certain governments in, it was very close to it. So I just want to kind of put the lightness back in, if that makes sense, and yes, have a more utopian perspective, and just kind of just more rom-coms in the world, I suppose, is like a big thing. I know Hugh Grant is getting up there, but British rom-coms still can have a life if they would just let us get back. So Upload, I watched recently. I just thought it was so good, apart from the last episode. I thought it was really good. I loved the idea of it, the wackiness of it, and it wasn't exactly a utopia, but it was an experimental kind of like, this is how life could go. And I really was quite interested in that. My friend Caroline Credo Perez wrote a book called Invisible Women, and as much as of a feminist that I am, I did not know the data. So when she was like putting that book together, and then it came out and stuff, it was just shocking how much women put up with, just from seatbelts to heart attack symptoms to like the fact that there's more money going into what's that thing where guys can't. Impotence? What's the thing?
Erectile dysfunction.
That's it. There's more money that goes into erectile dysfunction than goes into women's healthcare when it comes to the reproductive system, and that's shocking. And then there's things where like the birth control pill, for instance, was being made for men, but the side effects were very unpleasant for them, so they discontinued it. Yet the side effects for women are extremely unpleasant, and they were like, oh, you just have to put up with it. So that sounds very negative and terrible, but I really love it, because the more you know, the more you're armed with, the more you can change. I just think that it's like almost like a manual for, not that here we're going to tick everything off, we're going to give pockets to women, right? It's just more that like if you're aware of something, you could potentially help change it. And pop culture is more powerful than politics, because it is pop culture that is going to move things forward, and then politics catches up. So for instance, in the US, when they were trying to decide whether gay people could get married, which is crazy that was even like a vote or like a law that had to be passed. Like, again, the world is weird, but that I would say was more influenced by pop culture and that world. It was then that pushed politics forward. So I think people watch things and they think that it's very, very dismissive sometimes about writers and creatives and stuff like that, but they do not know how powerful it can be in an effort to change the world, just like little typewriter by typewriter. I don't even typewriter, laptop. Keyboard is the word I'm looking for. Because we try and reflect the world we see, and then, like you guys say, we try and put the utopian spin on it, but sometimes put the dystopian spin on it, but that's fine. But we also try and like push things forward so that that's the new norm.